Hello, everybody. It's Grizzly from Lexington, Kentucky. Coast to coast, all around the world. Have you all seen the news today about that monster that washed up on Australia's beach? The teeth the thing had on. I'm telling you, the things we don't know that do exist. I call them monsters, but Mr. Decker's in the house tonight. Let's see where we're going to go with him today. How you doing, Mr. Decker?
I'm doing all right. How you guys doing out there today?
Oh, give us a little background on you.
Little background. All right, guys. I was born and raised in Colombia, South America. Spent the first 10 years of my life living in the Amazon jungle or up in the Andes Mountains, kind of depending on what I was doing, if I was doing my school or not. From there, moved to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan to the deep North Woods where my dad comes from. Spent the next 10 years of my life up there, spending most of my summers deep in the woods. And from there, just kind of been all over from Florida, Wisconsin, Missouri. And currently I reside in Gatlinburg, Tennessee in the Great Smoky Mountains.
Oh, you're not too far away from where I'm at.
No, sir. In fact, on Thursday, I'm going to be up in Harlan County, Harlan, Kentucky. I've got an event going on there where we're doing kind of a Halloween chili dinner. And we're going to be telling a bunch of ghost stories and dogman stories. I got a bunch of really cool people I'm speaking with, and we're going to have a great time up there in Harlan.
Well, make sure and say hello to, for some reason, I don't, there we go. So make sure and say hello to Jimmy down there for me. I know he'll be showing
Jimmy, unfortunately, had to cancel out. He's got some family stuff going on, so I probably won't be seeing him.
Yeah. I hate to hear that.
Yep. We were excited to have him on board with us, but unfortunately, he's got some family stuff he's got to take care of, which can't fault him for that at all.
No, you can't, but I hate to hear that.
Yep.
So where do you want to go tonight? What
man, it's up to you. I am a wide open book. You know that. Whatever direction you want to go, I'm for it.
I tell you what, I had a guest. Let me get this little, I got a crink in my neck. I had a guest tonight, and he had a relationship not only with Sasquatch, but also Dogman.
Okay.
And he actually had photographs where it really wasn't that bad.
Okay.
You know? But his encounters with Dogman were gentle and polite and cozy. And you know, when I think about Dogman, I'm thinking about the big bad wolf and everything I've heard or encountered with other investigators or other people I interview that encounter them, and especially, I know everybody, it's entertainment, but some of the shows on TV that that portray them and recreate the scenes and stuff. I mean, what is the deal with Dogman?
Man, that's a crazy one. It's really one of my favorite subjects that I'm really into right now is the diversity in the reports, right? And this is where you get a lot of the people going, there's something going on more than just a natural animal, right? Because if we look at the historical context of Dogman, generally people refer back to the Cynocephaly. We're talking Alexander the Great. We're talking the great explorers. And there's reports that these guys, the Cynocephaly, were even in the armies. Like they were a culture. They were warriors. They would practice trade with different cultures and all these things. So they weren't just wild animals. They were a cultured, civilized peoples that had dog's head and bark like dogs and communicated through barks and yips and stuff like that. That's the history of them. They were fierce warriors. They had troops that would come into the armies, and they'd be like your berserkers or just your really fierce warriors. They'd have their own troops. And so I find it fascinating when you go back to the histories, they weren't these wild werewolf creatures in the woods. That's not what they were categorized at all. That seems to be more of a modern, starting in the medieval age concept of what these creatures are. And so it makes me wonder, are they the same types of creatures as was reported? Are they cynocephaly, or are they a separate type of entity altogether? We just don't know. We just don't know the background or the history of how these things came to be what they are now. My personal belief is that there are multiple entities that come across appearing the same way, where I think there might be a natural flesh and blood type creature that we would identify as a dog man, like an upright walking canine. But I also believe there's going to be some sort of dark demonic entities that use that same form. And that's where we get some of these other reports that are definitely on the paranormal, definitely on the demonic side. You know what I mean? So I really think there's a whole bunch of different stuff happening here, which is what's causing the huge debate in the field of, is it flesh and blood? Is it paranormal? Is it demonic? Is it not? You know what I mean?
Right. Can you read that? Even though I got my phone tilted the wrong way.
I can't. Oh, that's the Amazon Dogman attack, or the tax. Yes.
Yeah.
I actually got pulled into that. One of the things I have done in the past, especially here in Tennessee, we had some killings in Cott County, which I now live in Cott County, that were reported to be dogman attacks. And then when I went through and did my investigation, I got autopsy reports. I talked to the police department. They didn't tell me anything. I got the press releases that were released to the media. I got on Facebook and social media, and I found family members and friends of the victims. And I got down to the true heart of the story, and it wasn't dogman attacks. There's still certain people out there that are pushing that narrative. And I've debated a few of them, and I'm willing to talk about it. I do believe that the dogmen out there will do and can attack people. But I think we need to be very selective in our research and how we go about it. And so I was just contacting some of my researchers tonight going, hey guys, here's a breaking story right now that the cryptid circle is already jumping on, saying it's dogmen. Let's start investigating it and let's get into it and find out what's going on. So over the next couple of weeks, as this event unfolds, I'm going to be doing what I can do to find out what's really going on with this story and see if we can't find some of the deeper information instead of just what's being bandied about out there. Because I know it's going to happen.
Well, and no disrespect to anybody in any cryptid field or belief, but, you know, we do have government conspiracies, cover-ups, and so forth. But, you know, like I always say, you know, just because you walk into a forest doesn't mean every tree branch that's broken or bent means Sasquatch has done it or been involved with it.
Right.
You know, step back for a moment and, you know, look at the totality of everything.
Yeah.
It was quite interesting. What caught my attention out of everything was the location was next to a large field, in the minivan or van, however you want to state it, was backed up into the ditch.
Right.
So, yes, there are large dogs out there that can do harm. I've seen it.
Yep.
I've seen it done on humans. And unfortunately, law enforcement, that's why they don't play games with dogs or canines. But if a trained law enforcement actually knows that the canines reside at the residence, all you gotta do is take a fire extinguisher.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that, but I mean that's what I used to do and what we used to do on county when we served warrants. Just in case, we had 2 guys with fire extinguishers and one was non-lethal. So, but you know, I agree with you. I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see where you go with it. I like to follow up with you on it.
Absolutely. I'm really careful to tell this because I've been called a skeptic, a non-believer because of the research. And I say, look, I firmly believe that these creatures exist in various forms. If they exist it's only logical that we are going to cross paths with them. If we are crossing paths with these large, predominantly predator aggressive creatures, there are going to be fatalities. I mean, that's just logical reasoning, right? But what we have to be careful of as a culture, as a research group, however you want to define the community, is to jumping to those conclusions before we do any research, right? Because what's going to happen is, next thing you know, every mysterious thing that's happening is going to be cryptid related. Nobody's going to take us seriously. Nobody's going to listen to what we have to say. So if we can look at these various attacks and various things that happen and really dig into them, we should be able to sift through the ones that have a plausible explanation and the ones that are very mysterious, you know. And there's ways to do that. You can tell and you can look into things and be like, wait a minute, something really isn't adding up here. But then again, we can't use that to jump to the conclusion that it was cryptid related, because what I found in the Cott County cases is there was a cover up. There was some things not adding up. But when I dug a little deeper, I found out that it was more of having to do with the person involved and their involvement with the police department, the sheriff's department. And it had nothing to do with a cryptid cover up. You know what I mean? So we just need to be careful. I cautious enemy. By all means, go out there and research and look. And, you know, you can go to any of these websites and email the news reporters. You can now get in direct contact with the reporters, right? So that's one of the strategies I did, is I emailed one of the main investigative reporters covering the killings. And I said, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. I'm interested in anything you can tell me about this case. And they literally sent me an email with every single press release that the sheriff's department emailed to them. And then he kind of gave me his own conclusion afterwards, right? And what I found out was most of the stuff that was written in the paper articles, I call them newspaper still, but I know it's online, but news releases, most of what was in there was very speculative to make the article, right? They had their quotations and their facts, but everything else was just kind of them writing the story. And so we can't count that necessarily as fact, because even if you go back and look at the timeline of released events, the story changed between reporters and between different news outlets. And what I found is everything that changed was stuff from the individual reporters and news outlets. It wasn't anything in the police reports, right? Well, I can't say the police reports because those were never released because the case has never been closed. But from the official press releases, everything else was very speculative, you know. And yes, some of it was, we talked to this neighbor, they said this. We talked to this eyewitness, they said this. But again, that's all open interpretation, and you have to be careful with that. So I'm really interested in seeing this Amazon case, because I'm going to start following it and go to all the different news outlets and see who is saying what. Because like you said, I read the first report that I saw was the Amazon truck was found in the middle of a field. And then I heard in someone's front yard, right? And now you're saying, well, it was backed into the ditch next to a field, right? So we have to go through and find out, okay, where was it really? Because what happens with breaking news, especially something that's going to catch the media's interest, is people are going to put stuff out there as they hear it before it's actually verified. And that's common in that kind of a situation. And that's why the story changes.
What actually caught my attention, I don't know if I still have it saved or not, is that Amazon driver dead after possible dog attack. That's what caught my attention. You know, because it's always possible. You know, I'm not trying to get on any bandwagon, but, you know, it perked my attention. And I wanted to see what was going to come out in the cryptid world.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and the first I saw of it was from somebody saying, "Uh-oh, another dogman attack." And I'm like, all right, come on now.
Yeah.
But I will not deny the fact that I don't know if it's because nowadays it's just the trend for media, but there does seem to be an increase of dog attacks, or what they're calling dog attacks,
Yes,
animal attacks. So, but this, I don't know if statistically it actually is an increase, or if it's because it's kind of the new media buzz. And so when they happen, they're getting bigger attention. I don't know. I don't have those statistics. Right. So that's another thing I think researchers need to be careful of. And you'll hear me say all the time, we can make assumptions, but we have to really be really careful what those assumptions are. It's just like people say, there's so many more Bigfoot reports now, or there's so many more dogman sightings now than there ever was. Well, we don't really know that. All we know is there seems to be an increase in the reporting of sites and the reporting, you know what I mean? And that's two different things. And I
well,
say, I think people are more comfortable reporting this stuff now.
absolutely.
Right. So you're going to get more reports. That doesn't mean there's an increase of activity. It means there's an increase of people feeling comfortable enough to report.
That is correct. That is my belief this time.
Yep.
And speaking of Sasquatch, Bigfoot, I interviewed somebody, which everybody knows, which I didn't know about, that when he was at a younger age, I would say probably in his late 20s, early 30s, maybe somewhere around there, that somebody took him underneath his wing and taught him 5 years how to research and investigate Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in a good state, good location. And something happened. They got separated. And his buddy was never found.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I said, because I always see this on TV or media platforms and articles, and never was found. He called the police. The state police showed up. The game warden showed up. They looked and looked. They looked for over 3 weeks.
Wow.
And, didn't find nothing. Not a shred of clothes, anything. And then he went back out there, and he felt really bad.
Sure.
Guy just lost his wife. Now his kids, lost their dad to who knows what.
Right.
But then he finds his hat. And the reason why it's hat is in all of his hats, he wrote with a Sharpie his name. And for some reason, people did that back then. I don't understand. My uncle did that. I mean, my grandfather used to serialize all of his handguns and rifles.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that.
Doing that, you're ruining the value of it, But anyways, It really hit home because we actually got into a open discussion, and he started telling me his encounters that he has had and how people call him to help with the issues they have with Bigfoot. So I thought I'd be smart. I'm like, okay, I bet you didn't know this. I bet you didn't know that the government has that. And he finished my sentence.
Oh, nice.
A group of individuals made up of 6 to 12 of Green Berets or whatever, branch of military out there hunting these monsters down. And I was like, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. He said, absolutely, it's true. So, and when he was talking about his buddy and how he mysteriously disappeared, my hair was just standing up on both arms, and I tried to get it on camera. It really hit home. And not only that, he was talking about, and we'll go back to Dogman, he was talking about the different breeds of Sasquatch.
Yep.
And he was naming them, and I'm like, well, I've never heard that name. He was describing what their face looks like and why they're called this name, and how their teeth are like shark teeth or razor sharp, and And I'm sitting here thinking, what in the hell am I in La La Land or what? You know, I mean, I interviewed a lot of people in my lifetime, and then he starts talking about how he makes his own flashbang grenades, and I'm like, wow, because when he
Right.
said flashbang, I'm thinking of the ones I know a group uses that you hit a button and these white lights just pierce your eyes, and the sound is so blasting you got to cover up your ears, and that's
Mm-hmm.
and you pull them towards the threat and it scares them away. And
Yep.
they used them several times on their investigations. Well, I mean, he's telling me stories and encounters where they shot at him, and I didn't say anything, but he told me where him and his buddy's nephew was out there, and he made it perfectly clear when his nephew got knocked down that he shot, his nephew shot at two of them. He said 2 took off running. And I'm thinking to myself, well, what in the hell happened to the third one?
Right.
So I didn't ask that question. Evidently, he doesn't want to say, but he did say he did not say it ran away. So that, it seems to me, they must have dropped it.
Yeah.
But he says that it takes a lot of force to drop one.
Sure.
You know, heavy caliber.
Right.
And,
It's got to be that. I'm assuming it's got to be the combination of, the heavy weight with the caliber plus the heavy velocity.
that is
It's got to
correct.
be the right combination of it.
And don't get me wrong,
I'm not big on ballistics, but I just know stopping power and your velocity is two different equations, and you got to be pretty high on both to make it work for something that size.
right? And I mean, we made it perfectly clear to everybody that we're no shoot, no kill.
Right.
But then he was told how he's been called out to different places to help people with their encounters and the terrifying events. And I'm just like, what the hell? I was like, what the hell? What happened to the warm and fuzzy Sasquatch?
Right. Well,
These different breeds are different.
yep.
He says you can't trust them.
Yep.
And I mean, we talked for almost 2 hours about it, and it just really shocked me, because most of the stories we hear, they're in, what do you call it? Not inquit. What is it? When somebody's interested in you.
Oh, inquisical or just curious or
Curious.
inquisitive.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
And
Well, so I mean, I've come across a lot of reports and stories over the years where they might start off that way, but one of the things that I've picked up on, and other people have mentioned this, so I can't say it's original theory from me, is that Sasquatch in particular, they're not big on change. They don't like changes in routine. They don't like changes in patterns.
You're right.
And a lot of the stories that I've come across where there's extreme violence usually has to do with a change in a routine that they're used to.
That is correct.
A couple of examples. I listened to a story one time, I forget which podcast it was, where there was a group of cabins, and some people lived in the cabins long term, and some people were just visiting. Well, this story came from a girl that was visiting, and there was a little old lady that lived on the property that had a big freezer on her her front porch, a big chest freezer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and apparently and she used to keep meat in there, like elk and game and stuff like that, where hunters would hunt and give her some. Okay. And at one point she ended up putting a big heavy duty padlock on it. Okay. And apparently the Sasquatch clan in the area was stealing food out of that freezer. And that's why she put a padlock on it. Well, there was this horrible ruckus, and this girl and her family looked outside, and there was two huge male Sasquatch out there trying to break into this freezer, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. And so the family went and hid in the bathroom, and this girl kept looking out the window. And according to the report, they broke into the house and carried this old lady off, and never
Wow.
seen from again. And when the police, game wardens, whoever all responded, they chalked it up and said it was a bear attack.
I've heard that before.
Okay. Another story I heard about where there was this old farm guy living out by himself on his land, ends up getting sick, having a heart attack or whatnot, goes to the hospital. Has to stay in the hospital for a month. Okay. Again, just kind of throwing a number out there. And
Right.
so either his son or his nephew went out to take care of the livestock after about a week or so, once they figured out that the guy wasn't going back out there. And when he went out there, all the goats were massacred.
Wow.
And they couldn't figure out what happened. No clue. Well, come to find out, the elderly gentleman had habituated a clan of Sasquatch and had been feeding them on the regular. When they stopped the feeding process for a given period of time, the animals got really upset, and that was their retaliation.
See, ladies and gentlemen, what Grizzly tells you, you may think it's off the road or off in the left field of the universe, but heed my warning. Don't feed these things. Don't gift them. You don't know what you're up against. I mean, yes, you may have some friendly ones, but man, let me tell you something. I really need to go back and listen to the interview that I did and write down the names that this gentleman called them. And you know who I'm talking about, but I'm not going to say his name. But it really surprised me how he opened up, and I was just like, oh,
Yeah.
dumbfounded. And he really didn't care. He told the world exactly what has happened. And he goes, you can believe it or not, I can give 2 cents if you don't.
Yeah.
And it's just wild. And going back to Dogman, yeah, I mean, it goes back to ancient times, when it comes to Dogman.
Mm-hmm.
Bigfoot, same thing, when the
Yep.
settlers came over and the Spaniards, they called it hairy man or wild man or something. Bigfoot wasn't coined to 1962.
Right.
So, there's so many names it's called across the world, I know some people can rattle off probably 20 names right off the bat, but
Oh, sure.
but when it comes to Dogman, we're talking a different realm there.
Yeah, whole different ballpark. But I think, like we talked about on the last time I was on, is that the idea of Dogman still fits all my check marks of reliable, repetitive creature that's out there in some form. Where there's the historical context, there's the native lore and legend, that's multicultural. There's sightings going on today. You know what I mean? Like that all fits. So I've never seen one. I've never experienced anything I would ever chalk up to it. But I can't, in good conscience, say I believe in Bigfoot and then say I don't believe in Dogman. Or I'm also not one of these people that goes, a Dogman is just somebody looking at a Bigfoot and going, oh, it looks different, so therefore it looks like a canine. I don't believe people are that incompetent in what they're seeing. I really don't. Yes, that there are some descriptions of some Bigfoot that tend to have a bigger snout, kind of like a baboon style, or these different things. And yes, you get some supposed Dogman reports that have the primate-like legs, like we do, the bipedal legs, as opposed to the canine legs. And so I have to wonder about those reports, right? For sure. But when you got somebody who's literally describing an upright walking wolf that has the hocks, that has the backward bent knee, as they call it, yeah, I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, you just mistook a 9-foot giant ape for a gorilla. You know what I mean? Like that's just as insultive as going, you just mistook a black bear for a 9-foot Bigfoot. To me, it's just as insultive. You know what I mean? I hate that. Absolutely hate that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And I tell you something else that's questionable. I'm not trying to question anybody's integrity by no means. Is that, there's some people that we know, it's like they go out in the woods or the field, and every time they go out there, they come back with 25 pictures of Dogman.
Yeah, that's.
And I'm thinking, how long does that happen?
Right.
So I'm not trying to say you're dishonest or anything like that. I'm just saying it's just kind of strange in a way.
Oh, see, I call people out on it. I have no problem with that in the Facebook world. I'll be respectful to start with, right? But I will definitely, like, there was one just the other day I saw in a group, and it was obviously, to me, a tree. There was a whole big tree in the picture. And then some branches were hanging over the tree. And one of the bushes of the branches, the bunch of leaves, made it look like there was dog ears, like sharp triangle dog ears. And so what they did is they blew up this one section of this black colored tree that showed these dog ears and said, look, I caught a dog man.
Oh, Lord.
And then they showed the other picture, and I said, I'm like, you can literally see it's part of the tree. Like the tree extends past that branch with the leaves on it. Like, how can you in good conscience say, I caught a picture of a dog man, when I can look at it and go, it's obviously a tree. Like that's a tree with branches in front of it, you know, and that's becoming more and more prolific, and it absolutely drives me nuts. And I have no problem calling people out and saying, look, really, come on, you know. And
Yeah.
it goes back to diluting the real research. These people are not helping the field whatsoever. Right? Because you get a layman, a normal person, a new person coming into the subject, and they're seeing these pictures and they have critical thinking, and they're looking at it going, that is obviously not a creature, you know. But then you got all these other people, and if they say something and they get jumped on, they're going to leave and stop altogether. It's doing a huge disservice to our field.
That is absolutely true.
Yeah, and it drives me bonkers.
Yeah, and talking about the guy that we both know, Dogman got brought up, and by talking to this gentleman, I assume he's been in the military.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking nerves of steel.
Mm-hmm.
He said he did have nightmares for the first 15 years. His first encounter with Sasquatch was 16, less than 20 foot away. So he was deer hunting like everybody else was at that age.
Sure.
First time going solo, away from his dad. But, it took him the longest time to get back into the woods. And he's told me, he said, I take people out, and when they go out with me, they have to ride in the back of my pickup truck. And I'm like thinking, what in the hell for? And I'm thinking of this. He told me they're so wet and stinky, worse than Sasquatch. They're not riding up front with me. Oh, that's themselves. Okay, I got you.
Sure.
And he's telling me these are guys that's been in the service and served our country. So
yeah, but it's a whole paradigm shift, and if you really think about it, like I've never been in the armed forces. I've had too many physical disabilities to be allowed to. My dad was, my brother-in-law was. I got a lot of family members that were in the armed services. Thank you all for your service, everybody that's out there. But if I understand, a big part of the training, they break you down first and kind of program you mentally to be able to accept what you're going to be encountering in the military. Okay. And I know it's different. I would say different intensities for different jobs that you're doing, or different branches of the armed forces. Navy SEAL versus, Army desk, sergeant or something. It's going to be different training, absolutely. But you still initially get that training. And I've talked to a lot of, service members, and they say the same thing. That's what it is. That's what it's all about. And when you understand that process, then, you don't have all the some of the other stuff that goes on. But they're trained for that. That's what they do. But they're not trained to see Bigfoot. They're not trained to have their whole reality shifted.
And that's exactly what he said.
And that, to me, that's the big difference, where somebody like me, I've never had an experience. I would hope that if I have an experience, I could respond a little differently, just for the simple fact that they are already in my paradigm. I already believe they exist. I already have an understanding of what I'd be seeing and what I'm looking at. So I'm hoping of some of that traumatic byproduct of an experience I wouldn't have to deal with. I don't know if I would or not, but I would hope not. Same thing with the dog man, depending on what kind of encounter it is. Obviously, if it's a very aggressive encounter, Bigfoot or dog man, I'm assuming there'd definitely be some trauma, a little PTSD in there. You know what I mean? But if it's not, if it's more of a standardized sighting, I would say, then hopefully I won't have all the negative impact. But again, if you're military, yeah, you can be hardcore, but that's still not in your paradigm. And so it's still going to have that negative effect.
I've been scared at a younger age where I was so scared I couldn't run.
Yeah.
And me seeing something like that today at my age, I'd probably have a heart attack and die. I mean, I don't know how I would respond. I'd be honest with you. And with this guy that we know, he told me straight up, he's like, Grizzly, you got to stand your ground.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he says, you can't back down. You got to meet force with force. You got to show them that you're not backing down. And I'm thinking, dude, I'm not thirsty to fight.
Well, I was listening to a different podcast today, and the guest on was a wildlife biologist that had a dogman encounter. And he was saying the exact same thing. Whereas whatever apex predator you're dealing with, whether it's a bear, a wolf, a cougar, right? They're all apex predator creatures. And so they're not used to having anything stand up to them. He said, so 9 times out of 10, if you stand up to them and even bluff them, obviously, right? Wave your arms, get big, get loud, and yell. That's why they run off and get scared, is because they're going, holy crap, something's challenging me. I'm not used to this. And they'll take off, because in the animal world, they don't want to risk being injured, right? Because if they get injured, then they can't fend for themselves. They can't find their own food as an apex predator, right? So that's why even when you see grizzly bears fighting, they're not trying to actually hurt each other, right? That they're trying to see who's the biggest and the baddest 90% of the time. You know what I mean? And it's the exact same thing. So absolutely, you stand up to them. But I think I probably couldn't do it if I had an 8-foot male Sasquatch over here breaking branches down and pounding the ground and giving me a threat display. Yeah, my defibrillator is going to go into overdrive at that point. You know what I mean? I don't think I'll be able to make it out of that one.
Oh, I mean, I totally agree with you. And, the guy that we both know, that everybody knows, pretty much said the same thing. And and when he was talking about his other encounters throughout the years, it just like blew my mind how he said that when he had to, or his buddies or his group of men that went out with him, whether it's in whatever state he was in, because he did multiple states, he would travel multiple states to help people.
Yep.
But he said that once you shot at one, there's no turning around from that.
Right.
Because what other ones that are in that area knows that one is near you and they are coming.
Yeah.
So be prepared. And I've actually heard that from quite a few groups.
Yeah. So have I. So have I.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we got a Facebook user. There are some alleged wild dog attacks about a month ago in Oklahoma. 2 fatalities, male and female, but the area has no wild dog packs. It has raised the cryptic community eyebrow.
Yep.
Have you noticed the dog man is trending?
Well, it's exactly like we were talking about, where it's almost like every time there is an attack, the cryptic community is going to go, oh, it's a dog man. Oh, it's a dog man. Right. And that's what we have to be careful of. But at the same time, we have to be logical. Right. So we go, okay, wild dog attacks. Well, listen, we are not a third world country. I was raised in South America. We had feral dog packs. And yeah, you had to be careful of them. I mean, even in the big cities, you get feral dog packs forming, right? And yeah, they can be absolutely dangerous. Now, I've lived all over this country on this side of the Mississippi. The farthest I've lived out is Nebraska area. I have never, ever, 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 ever seen a wild dog pack. Okay, not saying they aren't there, but as many times as wild dog packs are getting blamed for these attacks,
Or bears.
you would think we would have a little more evidence of them, especially in the neighborhoods. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
you will know if there's a wild dog pack roaming your neighborhood. I mean, you're going to see them. You're going to see them trashing your trash cans, or you're going to see them attacking other dogs. You're going to see them going after pets. You're going to know they're there. Right. And so when they say wild dog pack, I always have to raise my eyebrow at that. I mean, that's one of the things I look at, right? Vice versa. A lot of times there was a case up in Kentucky where they said it was a pack of coyotes. Okay, well, at least that's a feasible explanation, but let's dig that a little deeper. Well, if I remember correctly, this was a young teenage boy, 13-ish, and he had been dragged up a hill, and not just a hill, right? So it's Kentucky Hollers. So we're talking a hill is basically the side of a mountain, the side of a ridge, a pretty steep angle. And it would take a serious concerted effort to drag this young man up a hill a substantial way. Right. And that was all that was released about that attack. Everything else has been shushed up. From my understanding is the courts put a gag order on everybody involved. Right. And so that one has raised questions, and I've dug into it a little bit, but I can't find anything on it other than what was posted in the papers about what happened. Nobody is saying nothing. There's no further follow-up. The release was, it was a coyote pack, and that was that. Done. Right? So that kind of attack raises suspicion to me, but unfortunately, I can't get any information on it. You know? And so that to me, that's a suspicion. But when somebody says a wild dog pack, that's also raising some red flags. I mean, how often have you seen a wild dog pack roaming?
I haven't.
Right. And there's been a few attacks. There was what was it? A doctor, was it? North Carolina, where she was found in the ditch, and they said a wild dog pack attacked her. You know, so there's definitely something going on out there that's getting put into the mix of what's going on, and that's kind of where I'm being pushed by other people to start digging a little more with it, you know.
Well, Mr. Decker, let me tell you something here. I got a stiff neck tonight. I had an opportunity to interview a psychic.
Okay.
Whether it's a he or a she, I will not name.
Okay.
And this person could not keep their focus on a conversation. This person kept their focus on me. And this person had to doodle. And every time this person doodled, I was like, oh, Lord, what is this person coming up with now? Well, this person was telling me about my tattoo on my left shoulder, what it was. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I never posted it on Facebook. Nobody knows what I have.
Right.
I'm not very sociable. I'm like, okay. And then the person told me about how many lives I probably saved. And I was like, wow. Okay, I'm listening. Then the person drew my old house, explained how you walked upstairs and downstairs and where it was located and how you would go up and down, drew it, and actually drew where I live, drew the 3 flights of stairs, and even to my bedroom and where my bed was and where the window was.
Nice.
And I'm like, and this person went on and on and on. And before I knew it, I mean, this person was doing people on live. People were asking questions and it just took off.
Sure.
But this person just kept coming back to me. So I was like, okay. I said, I got a question for her. I got to know. I was like, Appalachian Trail or Appalachian, however you want to call it. I was like, people go missing from there from all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And this person was like, what are you referring to? And I was like, people can turn corners. People can go hunting. They don't find any remnants of bodies, clothing, camping gears, hunting gears, rifles, shotguns, nothing.
Yep.
And this person said, okay, so you want an answer to that? And I'm like, well, I don't want to ask, but since you brought it up, please.
Right.
Well, this person, before I can even say please, it was already doodling. And he or she was looking up and looking down. And it was like they were in the scene or something.
Mm-hmm.
The person saying, I see a lot of mass graves. I see people digging holes and burying bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was trying to get at, is it supernatural or is it,
Right.
human? And the person says, it may be some supernatural, but I think it's more serial killers. And that's always been a theory of the unknown amount of serial killers that has been in that area for quite a long time, because it's so easy to be unnoticed or not even seen, up in those hills and mountains.
Absolutely.
So that kind of was like, wow, wow factor. And of course, everybody was popping up and asking this question, that question, but I had to throw it in there too, because I'm always curious about stuff I don't know.
Oh, absolutely.
And I was ignorant enough to know that Google has been scrubbing stuff as you searched it.
Oh yeah.
And like, I think I found that out last month, and everybody's telling me, no, don't use Google, use DuckDuckGo.
That's what I hear. I've never done DuckDuckGo, but what I hear.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I still go back to Google. And when I do, I'm like, well, what are you doing? Then you looked on the news today and you see this monster that washes up on Australian's beach, and whoever took the photograph did a good shot, because that monster's probably done gone, never to the lab.
Yep.
And this damn thing had teeth on it that you would not believe.
I'll have to look it up, because first time I heard about it is when you mentioned it in the opening. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah. And matter of fact, right before I came on the show with you, I was having problems when the computer was resetting. It was on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, well, I ain't going to be on there long. It never is.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, this happens all the time, but usually it doesn't make the news. But when you have civilians, you can tell I was in law enforcement. When you have people that are around with cell phones, you're gonna get pictures.
Yep.
Just like that over in, what was it, Spain or Italy or somewhere. that 40 people and the guy filming walked over to the rail and looked into the ocean, and they all looked down, and on this rock laid a mermaid, and they all start screaming, and the mermaid like kind of flop right into the water.
Yeah. I don't remember where that was. I remember seeing that.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that.
Yeah. I'm like, how can you explain that?
You know, I always find those interesting. I'm always somewhat skeptical, only because the technology has advanced so far for the right people. A lot of that stuff is easily manipulated. You know what I mean? So while I enjoy them when it comes to digital footage, and you know, I have seen some really amazing things that are completely manipulated. And as much as I enjoy them, those are always very hard for me to consider to be authentic. You know, it's like I say, rarely will you ever find a photo or a video evidence nowadays that we can actually use as legitimate evidence, especially if it's too good. You know what I mean? That's why we have to have the backstory. We have to know. And a 15-second TikTok video or whatever doesn't really cut it, because you don't get the front and the backstory. And so that makes it even a little more sus. You know what I mean?
And I didn't see it on a TikTok video, but
I'm just saying in general, right? So that's one of the things I look at is, why was this person filming? What is the context? Again, it goes back to that detail researcher from me. I see these videos all the time of, oh, look, I'm walking through the woods and a Bigfoot runs across my path. And I go, okay, but why were you filming in the first place? Because most people don't go walking down a trail randomly filming TikTok. You know, like that's not a normal thing. And so to me, that's like a setup almost. But if they're filming themselves, you know, they're filming themselves doing a TikTok thing, and look at me, and something runs across behind them. To me, that's a little more believable. That's a little more believable context, you know?
Right. I agree with that totally.
Yeah. But I love mermaids videos. The idea of mermaids fascinates me. That's another one of those things where I've read stories of sightings of, like, in Africa. Africa has a ton of mermaid sightings in the rivers, like freshwater in the rivers, mermaid sightings. Well, I don't know if it's a cultural thing, but there's a ton of them.
Well, they used to draw them up on maps.
Yeah, absolutely.
The old would say they would sing to them.
Yeah.
And I always get grizzly. They've been drinking beer and they're drunk. I'm like, come on. Then they say humanities, you know, were causing the sightings with drinking. And I'm like, ladies and gentlemen, there's a difference between a sea manatee and a mermaid. Come on.
Yes.
I mean,
absolutely.
There was a video that surfaced not too long ago, and I think it's authentic. I don't care what anybody says. It looked like a miniature mermaid skeleton that washed up on the beach. And this gentleman was walking his wife along the beach. And he was so intrigued with this thing, he walked over to it and he started poking at it. And you can hear her in the background. It stinks. Leave that thing alone.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm bringing it back to the hotel room. Oh, you are?
Yeah, that'd be me.
I'm going to bring this back. I mean, it really looked 100% real. Now, was it? I couldn't tell you. Number one, I wasn't there. Number two, I didn't take the photograph or video.
Yep, exactly.
But, you know, it wasn't like their intentions were to go right over to this thing. I mean, they were just walking along, just talking.
Sure.
And he was just like, what is that over there? And he just walked up from his wife and he was like, good God.
And that's normal context when you're walking on the beach. I lived in Florida. We would always do that. What is that? Let's go check it out. That's normal. That's exactly what I would expect, you know?
So, you know, when anybody says anything about a a myth or a legend, or what they have or have not seen, you know, I never draw a line in the sand. I told you before, because that line's got to be moved somewhere.
Yep.
You know,
I'm a big believer. All myth and legend has a basis in fact.
Absolutely. I
Everything.
believe the same.
Everything. Now, what the fact is, that's the hard part to discern. And sometimes you'll never discern it because the story's been so polluted, or it's a natural thing that a story was created to explain. I mean, there's a lot to it. But I believe every myth and legend has a basis in fact somewhere along the line. You know. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. I mean, there's creative writers out there. Like we have, obviously Stephen King is absolutely amazing, right? We have the minds out there that can completely fabricate everything, but those legends don't generally become enduring over time. Those aren't the ones that generally stick with people. They're not the cross cultural stories. So when you have something again that's cross cultural, you have to take that a little bit more into account. When we're looking at myths and legends, because so many myths and legends out there. If you get away from the name of something and you look at the description and the attributes and the behaviors, you find so many things that are cross cultural. It's not even funny. You
Yeah.
know,
And just like I
I'm a
said
big
about,
believer in take away the name of whatever somebody calls it and look at the description and everything that's going on, and then you can decide for yourself where that fits into what category as a researcher. You know,
yeah,
it's amazing
it's
when you really dig into it, like how much of it is out there across countries and cultures and languages and all this stuff. It's absolutely fascinating.
well, I tell you what, I interviewed a guy, but it's been months, and he's from the UK. We talk on a regular basis, and he had a woodsman encounter. I don't know if anybody knows what a woodsman is, but over there in the UK, a woodsman goes back to the ancient times. I mean, they're actually still in churches, the
Mm-hmm.
statues of them, and they got the wreath around their head, and
Yep.
it's supposed to be like part human, part tree, or something along those lines.
Yep.
Well, when he was younger in his potty days, he actually woke up in the middle of the night while everybody else was sleeping in the middle of the woods, and one was sitting there on a tree stump watching him. And he got freaked out, and we talked about it, and he said, "You can go to any church over where I live, and it's there." And it's like, I've actually heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I got talking about Bigfoot and Dogman, all this other stuff, and I get a picture. I don't know if did I save it. Let me see here.
So if I remember correctly, the woodsman is also known as a woodwose or the
Yes,
green
correct.
man. The green man, I think, is also they referred to it by. And there's a lot of cryptid researchers that just kind of go, well, that's the UK's Bigfoot, and that's how they referred to him. And I understand because a lot of the pictures depict like they're hairy, furry. But like you said, they also got the wreath around their head. And I don't know if that's symbolic for their protectors of the woods. I've heard that theory on it before. Um, there's definitely something there. What it is, again, I don't know.
See if I can hold this still enough. Did I start a craze or what?
Yeah,
That's all the books he went out and bought, and he's still
yeah,
buying more.
sure.
He says I'm hooked. He says I've actually talked to other people, older generations or generation,
Hmm.
and he's finding out stuff that's happening in his area that he never knew. So
Yeah,
he's very curious now.
got to get out and talk to people. It's amazing, amazing what you find out when you're willing to be open and talk to somebody sincerely.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Absolutely. I mean, for example, I just started a new job. Okay. Not the most exciting job in the world, but hey, it's working for me right now in my circumstances. And I wear my paranormal roundtable hat. And two of my coworkers were like, "Oh, are you kind of into that kind of stuff?" I'm like, "Yeah, you could say that." you know. And so I start talking, and one girl starts telling me about how at night at her house when they're sitting out, they can hear all these different screams and howls, and they don't know what it is. And I'm like, "Well, that's really cool. Let's talk about that a little more." And then she goes on to tell me of an encounter that she had, and she described it as looked a lot like a coyote, the same kind of coloring, but it was really big. And asking her the questions and qualifying some of her statements, what I think is that she is encountering a red wolf on her property here in Tennessee, not more than 10 miles away from where I am right now. And the
Wow.
experience that creeped her out is she was watching TV one night, and she had their doors open because they like to have the doors open, have the breeze come through or whatnot. And she looked over next to the couch, and this wolf is standing right there next to her couch looking at her.
No,
And so,
no.
right? So she screams and wakes up her dogs, and the dogs chase it out of the house. Now, talking to her, there was zero paranormal anything about it. There was nothing about anything that would make her think it was anything other than just a wolf in her house. Which, in my own mind, I'm going, do you have any idea how insane that reality is? Like, wolves generally don't just walk into your house and stand there and look at you. But there was no supernatural effect at all to the encounter for her. Right. And it just blew my mind. And these stories are just coming from me wearing a hat and people asking me if I'm into it, you know? And then another girl in my same training group told me of an encounter about 2 years ago. Her and her friend were outside playing a ball at like midnight, just kicking a volleyball around. They were having a sleepover and just kind of hanging out, right? Well, Oliver, her son, her friend kind of looked off into the distance in the yard and said, "Hey, we need to go inside right now." And the girl was like, "Why? What are you talking about?" Like, no, we got to get inside. And so they went inside, and her friend told her in the wood line, she saw a creature. And she didn't know what it was, and it scared her. So she's like, "We have to go inside right now." Well, the description of the creature fits what's being called the rake or the pale crawler right now. The slender, golem-like creature, pale, big eyes, the long fingers. And this girl, the girl that was telling me the story, she didn't see it. She's telling me what her friend told her. And then when they looked it up on the computer, they found pictures of the pale crawler. And she's like, it was kind of like that, but a little different, her friend said. It wasn't. And I'm going, well, I kind of expect that because these aren't actually photographs. These are artist renditions of what people are describing. And she was like, this is what my friend saw at my house 2 years ago. And I have never had a legit pale crawler report before. And so I was kind of geeking out about that, right? I was like, man, this is awesome. Completely unsolicited. I wasn't out asking anything, but because I was sincere in my belief and I said, hey, yeah, I'm really into this kind of stuff. And I was serious about it. They were cool coming and telling me the weird stuff that was happening, you know? And it was awesome. I absolutely loved it. It was so cool.
Yeah, I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, if you give somebody an ear and not make fun of them and open your mind up, you'll be surprised what people will say.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm always a firm believer in that, you know, and nobody will ever change my mind on that stance.
Nope.
But this dog man, you know, I don't know. I don't know what to say. It
I
just,
don't know.
it just blows my mind. I really don't.
Here in Appalachia, they say it is literally a huge hotspot for dogman, especially in the Great Smokies where I'm at, you know. But I'm still trying to figure out how to break that ice into researching that in this area. You know, Bigfoot's one thing. Bigfoot's cultural now. You drive around the Smokies, there's Bigfoot stuff everywhere. You go to your local grocery store, they got Bigfoot hats and jackets and shot glasses, right?
Yeah.
But broaching the dogman subject is going to be harder. It really is, you know. And I'm trying to find the people, the way, just by being open. I'm really hoping I can start making contacts and people will start coming and saying, hey, I've seen this, I've seen that. You know what I mean? Or at least as people in the area come to know me a little more and I'm out there more, that I can start making those contacts to find out more, because I really want to start hearing the stories from the people themselves. You know, I really, really want to start broaching that subject the way I research things.
I think they're afraid.
I would be too. They're going to think you're crazy if you come out and say, "Hey, I saw a werewolf the other night," or I was out hunting last year and I saw a werewolf walker, because that's what they're going to call it, because that's their reference point. Like we talked about before, people are going to use their references for their experiences. And nobody's going to believe them, just like it used to be with Bigfoot. Nobody's going to believe you. Nowadays, it's cool. It's a fad to have a Bigfoot sighting.
Yeah.
And so, but with Dogman, it's just crazy.
Still don't have a sighting.
Yeah.
But you got people on Facebook that has them every weekend.
Every weekend. Every weekend. I keep telling, I put out there too, look, I will, if you want me to come out and show me, then I will somehow make arrangements to make it happen.
Dude, do I got the people for you?
I would love to do it. Now, I'm hoping sometime in the future I can be a little more, I'll have a little more flexibility in my schedule and my finances where I can make that happen. That's my goal. If I have a goal as a researcher, I want to be a mobile researcher and have the ability to say, hey, this person's having an experience or something's going on. I want to go to that location and spend time there. I want to be able to go spend a month and hang out and park a camper, park a tent, sleep in a spare bedroom, whatever. You know what I mean? And experience what's going on. Because I believe if you're going to go there for 3 days, chances of something happening are pretty nil. You know what I mean? But if you spend a substantial amount of time there, then we're looking at, you know what I mean?
Right. Flat Rock says, I'm looking for the researcher that actually made a profit from their encounters. And, I mean,
people profit
and stuff, right? People buy books and stuff. And, like I showed you earlier, my buddy, he got hooked, because we got on a conversation and then a tangent about Dogman and Sasquatch. I was just about to say something, and that comment I agreed with. But like I said, I think people are afraid to come forward.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know what they are, where they come from. Are they truly flesh and blood? Just like Sasquatch. Some believe they are. Some people say they're interdimensional. Some people say they're both. I have no clue. But, when you ever had that capability, I got a guy close to you, close to Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
He swears up and down that he's got 13 clans of Bigfoot. And they're
13 clans.
13 clans.
Okay.
And he's traced them all the way up the Green River.
Mm-hmm.
And he says they're all along the Green River where the Indians used to live in caves. Okay. And he showed me a lot of eye shine. He doesn't have money for a flare.
Right.
But he actually, at one time, got the media was going to spend a Saturday night out with him.
Nice.
She got too scared, so they backed out.
The media did?
Yeah, the media did.
Sure.
Because I about fell over. I'm like, dude, if you got the media there, then we're going to go live with you because I want this on live, and we're not going to stop podcasting. But he said, here's my telephone number. He announced it on the show. You don't believe me. You don't believe in Bigfoot, Sasquatch, where you want to call it. Come on down. I'll take you out myself. And it's just like people like that. I mean, what are you going to do? Call them out, I guess.
Yeah. That's exactly where I'm hoping to be able to get sometime in the future to have that ability. You know what I mean? To do that. I know that's what everybody says, but like I think I'm on track. I mean, I'm this close to having to go on disability for my heart and stuff. And honestly, that'll free up a ton of time.
Right.
And so I'll be able to make stuff work and do things. And then that is my eventual goal. I'm looking at some self-employment options that'll help bring in some finances, different things like that, where I can create my own schedule, where I should be able to make that happen.
Well, that's awesome.
Again, that's a goal of mine and that goes for all kinds of stuff, right? These dog attacks. I would love to be able to go out on site to where these attacks are happening. Like I did in Cott County, my girlfriend and I, Jennifer, we drove down after the second attack and we did a Facebook Live driving up and down the road. Like, this is where this happened. This is the neighborhood. This is what it looks like, giving a description. That I would love to have a channel doing that kind of stuff. I think that'd be epic.
I'm surprised you didn't get pulled over and say, I'm practicing my First Amendment.
No, there was no cops out there that night. That's for sure.
But I mean, that would actually be amazing, to have a paranormal crew or dogman crew, however you want to call it.
Yeah, just 4TN, right? Because I call myself a 4TN researcher. I'm not anything. I'm not Bigfoot. I'm not Dogman. I'm not this or that. I research all of it. I'm into anything that's weird, paranormal, unnatural. However, I'm into it.
I hate getting old. You can't see anything. Everything's too far away. Hey, Jerry, how you doing? But no, and I mean, I think that would be cool. And that, and that brings me back to the Ghostbusters movies, where they get called out and stuff. So, and it reminds me of the gentleman that I interviewed talking about how his buddy disappeared. And like I said, when he told me about that case, I froze up. I'm like, I told him, I said, you only hear about that stuff on TV.
Right. Yeah. That's the hyper dramatic stuff.
Yeah. And he said he had a rough time dealing with it for the longest time, but my heart still goes out to him, But, But Dogman, I don't know. It's just different realm for me. I don't know. I've seen the recreations they've done on TV and shows and stuff, and people that portray the witnesses that the encounters happen to. Sure. And I'm like, you lived through that car with that encounter with that beast attacking the vehicle, and they got proof on the vehicle that what the Dogman has done. Unbelievable. Yeah.
There's some wild ones out there, man. But I have some very close personal friends of mine that have had their own Dogman experiences. I looked into the eyes of a gentleman while he was recounting his experience, and there was no hint of falsity in his eyes. He was very sincere, and you could see his physical reaction as he was recounting this story. And he's been on a few different podcasts now, and his story is kind of making the rounds a little bit. And some people have called BS on it, but I stood face to face with this guy outside of a restaurant, him telling me the story and me asking my questions. And you could see, like I said, his physical response. You could see the points where he was scared. You could see him stop and take that longer, harder hit on his cigarette, and just kind of having to breathe himself through the experience. And this is real. Something is real. I cannot, in good conscience, look at this person and be like, I think you're mistaken in what you saw. You know what I mean? Because there's no way. There's no way this really happened to this guy.
I'm a firm believer.
So there's got to be something out there. There has to be. What it is, again, we don't know. My personal belief is multiple different things are happening, all being labeled as Dogman. But this guy had a real physical encounter with a living, breathing creature, and he was not into the subject at all. He was one of these regular guys that had an extraordinary thing happen to him. and he has spent years trying to cope with it and understand what he had to go through.
All right.
And this,
Go ahead.
this
I'm
was
sorry.
go ahead. No, so this was several years ago, and he's just now becoming comfortable really putting himself out there with the story. My understanding was after it happened, he did do a podcast and talked about it, but he had such a negative response that he completely shut it down for like 5 or 6 years and wouldn't tell anybody.
That's typical.
Yeah. And then he came back to it, and now he's got with the right people that are encouraging him and supporting him. And he's willing to come out and talk to those people on their shows and tell his story.
It's always those people, you know.
Yep.
I interviewed a guy tonight that's been harassed, and I say harassed, and calling this guy such a BSer. And you know him too. He's very well known. Don't have the meanest bone or the meanest bone in his body. Nice as can be, you know, and I refuse to let him on my show. So if you're out there watching, sorry. But I want to know the question that people do not understand is what is the difference between a dog man and a werewolf?
Well, so we're talking exactly. A werewolf, by definition, is a human that, under certain circumstances, transforms into an upright walking canine creature.
Right.
Whereas the dog man, that is its natural form. Like the upright canine creature is its natural native form as opposed to something it transforms into. So for me, that's going to be the definition. That's going to be the difference between what we call a werewolf or what we call a dog man. Now, there are those people out there that say they can look at one and tell the difference, you know, this and that. And those are ones I have to say, okay, well, that's cool. I will store that information away. And then at some point, we'll see if that's true or not. You know what I mean? But it's the same thing with people using the term skinwalker. That's one of the big trends right now, is seeing one of these creatures and calling it a skinwalker. And I think we talked a little bit about that on the last show, where I take issue with that just for the fact that a skinwalker is a very specific thing, just like a werewolf is a very specific thing, right? But a werewolf, it has been culturalized to us, right? You can ask anybody anywhere in our culture, they'll know what a werewolf is. And so if they come across something that appears to be a werewolf, that's what they're going to call it, without a doubt. You know what I mean? Unless they know what a dog man is.
Yeah, I mean, you made a valid point. And speaking of that, speaking with that psychic, Skinwalker was brought up with him or her without even asking. And I'm trying to remember how it all went down. But that person said along the line something of the dog man, or I'm trying to remember how they phrased it. It's not all what it claims to be. Its mistaken identity is usually a skinwalker. Something along those lines, somehow.
Right.
I wish I could remember a lot clearly, but unfortunately I can't. So
another big problem I have with the idea is, if that's the case, there are a lot more evil shamans out there than we know about. Right? Because we look at the hundreds and hundreds of dogman reports from all across the country, all across the globe. I mean, I've heard reports from Brazil, reports from the UK. I can't think of any reports from Asia or you know, the Eastern continents at all, but definitely South America. They got the Lobozon. Brazil, particularly, I've heard reports from Paraguay and Belize. and then, like I said, the UK has them, and so they can't all be evil shamans that have all gained the ability to shapeshift to these creatures. I mean, to me, that sounds more unrealistic and more implausible than that there's these real creatures out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Given
I
the
mean,
numbers, there would have to be. Now, saying that, I believe in the possibility of using different types of so-called unquote unquote magic or shamanistic rituals or different things that you may be able to somehow gain the power to either actually transform or to at least give the illusion that you transform to people that see you, which I think is more realistic of what would be happening. But I think that number is probably fairly small for the
I
people that
agree
take
with
that
that.
route. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to discount stories. In fact, this event I'm going to Thursday, the story I'm relating actually has to do with a satanic transformation into a dogman creature.
Oh,
That
wow.
was eyewitnessed. But again, with the hundreds and the different types of dogman sightings, like the one I heard today with the wildlife biologist hunting out in the woods and came across with his experience, that's not some random shaman out in the woods randomly walking around and happens to come upon a hunt. You know what I mean? That's just, is too far fetched. And that's some saying something coming from people like us that study and believe in this kind of stuff when something's a little too far fetched.
Well, we can go back to the old black and white days. I'm referring to TVs, ladies and gentlemen. Sit back down. About outer space and going out there, and lo and behold, the technology came. Star Trek, The Next Generation, Captain Kirk and Spock. I don't know what the world's trying to tell us, like I talked to you before, Independence Day with Will Smith was scrubbed 13 times before it was released to the movies.
Right.
So I really would like to know what they scrubbed over 13 times, but who knows?
Not us.
Yeah. And that's the truth. But the thing though is people that don't believe will believe one day. And it's always the ones that don't believe it happens to.
Yeah.
And the ones that really are hard believers of not believers, if that makes any sense, are the ones usually come out with the PTSD and just messed up for life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they still cannot fathom, wrap their heads around it, process it. And it messes them up that bad. So how do people get a hold of you?
The best way to find me is on Facebook. Just look me up, Justin Decker. You'll always see me with a bandana in my profile picture because I pretty much always wear one. That's the best way. And the beard, pretty easy identifiable. Facebook. Yeah, I'm working on it. I'm looking at doing some adjustments in my shaping here soon. So
I'm going to grow a little bit farther before I do any shaping.
Yeah, see, that's what I had to do, but I'm getting down there pretty good now. You can always, like I said, Facebook me if you want to message me and say, hey, I heard you on a show or I'd like to talk to you. I'm always open. I'm not one of these guys that's just going to shut you down or do whatever. Hit me up, talk to me, get a hold of me. That's always the best way, is just through Facebook and through Messenger. If you try and friend request me and I profile search you and we don't have any of the same friends and you don't have a lot of like specific posts and I don't see anything of the subject in your timeline, there's a good chance I'm not going to approve you. So again, just hit me up with a message first real quick and just say, hey, I heard you on a show or I want to talk about this. And I am always open to having more people to discuss things with.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Decker himself. I tell you, I always said it's never going to be a dull show. Speaking of show, would you like to be on Grizzly's show? All you have to do is email me, Grizzly, the paranormal at gmail.com. Once again, that's Grizzly, the paranormal at gmail.com. Man, it's that time, Mr. Decker.
Yes, sir.
Say goodbye. It's always been a privilege speaking to you.
Always enjoy it.
I want to know the truth behind that Amazon.
I'll do what I can. I'll dig into it and see what we can come up with.
Man, would that be so good? I'm telling you, it really would be. You know, I've always been one of the people that want to know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Absolutely.
Hell, even in the court systems anymore, you don't put your hand on the Bible. So,
Nope.
But, ladies and gentlemen, from coast to coast, around the world, it's that time of the night. We must say goodbye. Mr. Decker, it's been a pleasure, sir.
Pleasure as always.
I look forward to having you back. Hopefully you have some answers for me.
We'll see.
Until then, kind sir.